Hi, I'm here with Jim Nova of the Pittsburgh Symphony, and he will be one of the guests at the International Trombone Festival 2019 in Muncie, Indiana. That's July 10th through the 13th, so make sure to come out for that. Welcome, Jim, to your own home. So before we get into it, what will you be doing in Muncie at ITF this year?
Well, a couple of years ago I played with Chris Van Hoff at his previous school, and we did my whole Trombone at the Movies concert, and that went really well. And so now that he's in Muncie and he's running the ITF conference next summer, he asked if we could do the full concert version of my album. So about 6 years ago, I was looking for kind of a fun way to get into shape for the symphony season. And I've been doing all these trombone, much like you've been doing arrangements for trombone choir basically since I was in school. And so I took one of my arrangements, this Superman arrangement, and I started trying to just record all the parts myself. And I thought that would be a really fun way to get in shape for the season. So I started putting those out on SoundCloud, and I figured a few people might listen to them. But I think probably by the time this video airs, my SoundCloud page will have passed 700,000 listens, which, it's pretty insane. But then after those kind of became popular, the overdubs, people started asking me to come and do concert versions of these arrangements. So I started doing that, and then I went back a few years ago and decided to start actually making commercial grade recordings of especially the Star Wars charts. So I put together this whole album of basically it's like a musical journey of how Anakin Skywalker becomes Darth Vader.
Cool.
And what more sinister, colorful instrument than the trombone,
right?
To do that. So, yeah, it's really grown into this thing. And when I first started doing that, I didn't have nearly this many horns, but it's been a really fun journey and really rewarding.
Cool. So you'll be performing the entire album at ITF?
Yeah, it'll be concert version. So it won't be. There'll probably be some cuts in places and shorter versions of some of the tunes and sort of more performable versions of them.
I understand that. Yeah.
But it'll be a smaller group. I'm shooting for like a 10-piece group with percussion.
Cool.
And Chris has already asked me to try and put together like an insane group for that. So
Van Hoff, right?
Yeah. So
cool.
I'm working on doing that and seeing which buddies of mine who've played in the past, and
well, that'll be awesome.
Yeah, there'll be some familiar faces for sure.
And you're no stranger to the International Trombone Festival, so what were you doing last year there?
Last year I came in on the first day. I could only be there for the first day for a very good reason, actually.
Okay.
And I'll tell you that in a sec. But I came in on the first day and I did my overdub class where I kind of explained how I do mine and how it's beneficial for your playing, and I did a master class, and then I also played in the Southeast Trombone Symposium Professors Choir concert that night, and we played a couple of my arrangements at the end of the night. So I was just there for the one day, and I left after the concert that night and drove back to Pittsburgh to make it back in time for the orchestra playing Star Wars with the score. We played the full score with the movie.
Oh, cool.
And I was like, there's not many things I would drive through the night to get to.
You're not missing that one.
But I wasn't going to miss that.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to miss that. So, yeah, it was a lot of fun.
So now let's rewind. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in a little town outside of Hartford, Connecticut, South Windsor, Connecticut.
Oh, okay. That's not far from where I went to school.
Yeah.
And what was the music scene like there? A lot of trombones, a lot of competition, or not so much?
Well, I was very lucky. My family moved to South Windsor when I was in middle school, and the band director of the middle school was this really excellent trumpet player named Jim Turek. And he played, I believe he played in one of the military bands before he started teaching full time. And so he was kind of like my first teacher in that setting. But he had really good connections in the music scene in Connecticut. And then when I went on to high school, my band director in high school was the second bassoon player in the Hartford Symphony.
Oh, okay.
So when my dad contacted him about getting me lessons, private lessons, when I was, hi Max. So my dad talked to my band director about getting private lessons. He said, oh, well, you should take lessons with my good friend George Sanders, who still is the second trombone player in the Hartford Symphony.
Okay.
So he was my first. I started taking lessons with him when I was 15, and actually, it was on this.
Oh, you have your first trombone there?
This is my first trombone, my Yamaha student model instrument. So I still have it. So I was taking lessons, and my teacher was, George was like, "Look," he said to my parents, "Look, he's totally outgrown this horn. He's got to get a real horn." Mm-hmm. So he said that back then it was like you either played a Bach 42 or a Con 88H. So there was not all these choices like there are now. And so my parents, got me my first this horn right here, Bach 42. So they got that horn for me in April of my freshman year of high school, and the following summer, my mom actually passed away, and she was the one who basically got me that horn. Mm-hmm. And she used to come to every concert I would play. It didn't matter if I was playing at a school assembly or something. She would come and watch it and hear me play. She was just a real supporter. So after that, that's when music stopped being something I do, and it became something I am.
Okay.
I really started to connect with playing and realize, that it's what I wanted to do with my life. As a matter of fact, I remember my dad used to take me to go see Hartford Symphony concerts, and
Goodbye.
come on, be an interview if you're gonna. You good? Okay. So my mom and dad had a subscription to the Hartford Symphony. They would go see concerts, and after she passed away, he started taking me.
Okay.
So I remember going to see the orchestra do Mahler's Fifth Symphony, and just being so overwhelmed and blown away by the music that I just stood there and I pointed after the concert was over, and my dad was like, I was like, I want to do that.
That was the first time you Mahler's Fifth was the one for you?
Yeah, that put me over. I think it was such a connection for me because it's such a dark beginning and funeral march, and then incredibly exuberant ending, and it was something I really connected with, and I was like, that's trombone was always something it came naturally to me, but like I didn't make the real connection to wanting to do it for a living, wanting to this is what I want to dedicate my life to. So
that was your sophomore year of high school?
Yeah, so I was 15 and closing in on 16, and that's what I wanted to do. And I just put my life towards that. And then going forward from there, I got my senior year. I got into Curtis, and I went and studied with Glenn Dodson and the previous former principal trombone in the Philadelphia Orchestra. And he would have these. I had never even thought about arranging for trombone, or I just never even crossed my mind.
You never did any arranging before?
Not in high school.
Okay.
When I got to Curtis, my freshman year, Glenn Dodson would have these. He used to call them bone bashes at his house, and he would have the Curtis studio come to his house and the Philadelphia Orchestra section come to his house, and we would play these arrangements that many of them had either bought or did themselves, and there was a rule that like you had to bring something.
Okay.
It didn't have to be something you arranged, but it would be preferable. So that's when I did my very, very first arrangement. I arranged the second movement of Beethoven's Seventh Symphony, which doesn't have any trombones, so it's kind of funny to.
So it's a total transcription.
Yeah, it's complete transcription, and it's not bad, I mean, for a first effort, and but hearing that quality of group absolutely planted the seed that grew into what is my album. That just the idea that things can sound great on trombones, and Dodson would always be, we'd play like the Barber Adagio or something like that, and he'd be like, everything sounds better on trombone. So it was very infectious, and I think it's also one of the most powerful ensembles, and I think that's part of what makes it so fun to arrange for it and to record, because then you get to really explore this broad range of color and timbre and style, and plus we're so maligned as trombone players of people don't realize what kind of technique we actually have.
And when a trombone player arranged something.
Exactly. So after that, I went to after Curtis, I went to New England Conservatory. I studied with a man who many consider the Yoda of the trombone, and that's Norman Bolter, who's an incredible composer in his own right, and writes wonderful music for trombone choir and many groups, orchestra and chamber music and such. And he was really an incredible influence on me. I went through a pretty rough patch. I was just in a bad place, and he kind of steered me away from the cliff, because I almost stopped playing.
I have a similar story myself. You get burnt out.
Well, especially when it's such a high pressure business and such a competitive business that you can get in your own head so well, in these situations. So Norman really steered me back, and
the perfect person to do that as well.
Exactly. I mean, he's still a real good close friend, and he's the first phone call I have whenever I either have some playing thing I can't figure out, or if I have a student, but his students often refer to him as the Yoda of the trombone.
It makes a lot of sense. I could see that.
So he's wonderful, and he was very encouraging of continuing to do arrangements and stuff.
Sure.
And so then I freelanced in Boston for a few years after I graduated.
Where were we in the progression? So
well, at that time I didn't have a bass. I had an alto trombone from my time at Curtis.
Okay.
And I had a small tenor actually right behind you. That horn I got because when I was playing extra in the Boston Symphony. At the time, it was Ron Barron was playing principal, and whenever he would play alto trombone, if I came in as a sub to play second, Doug Yo was the bass trombonist at the time, and they both were like, it'd be great if you switched to like a little bit smaller instrument. Just timbre would be better, and so that's when I got my first medium trombone. It's different now, but it's a medium bore 525 bore Shires.
Okay.
But I started on. I borrowed Ron Barron's like Con 8H and just played on that until I got my own. I got a Shires that was a little closer to a Con 8H. But then
after... You were still playing on your Bach 42 for all the other stuff?
I switched to I don't have it anymore, but I switched to my first Shires trombone didn't have a serial number.
Oh, wow.
Because that was when that was 1996. And I was playing this Bach, and I just wanted a change. I wanted something, and at that point, Shires had just kind of come on the scene officially, I think. He'd been making horns in his garage or something for years, but, and so I played Norman Bolter. Norman Bolter had one, so I played his, and I was wow, I love this. Can I?
Yeah,
and I went
truly
to the
custom, made for him.
So I went to the factory and picked out one, and I've been playing Shires trombone since 1996.
So where were you in 96?
That was in Boston. That was when I started my master's degree.
Okay, at NEC.
So after I finished my master's, I freelanced in Boston for a few years, and actually that's when I first started working with John Williams. And, and I'd always loved his music, but getting to work with him in an orchestra was just a dream. I mean, he is,
Go back to where that started. When was like your first time hearing John Williams music? Do you remember any of that stuff?
That's way back. That is when I was a kid, long before I played trombone.
So this is before Mahler, this is before trombone,
before Mahler,
this is everything.
Yeah, it was when The Empire Strikes Back came out, I was 6.
Okay.
And my brother and my dad and I went to see it. And I just remember being so completely captivated by the music and just being like, what is the, I
didn't know what a trombone was yet?
Not really, no. I mean, my dad played classical music in the house growing up. Like when I was a kid, my dad didn't, my family wouldn't they wouldn't read bedtime stories to me. They would my dad would put on a record and explain the story of the piece to me.
That's
and act it out and stuff, like the Firebird. I remember vividly him putting that on and saying, this is the part when the Firebird, it's I have that burned into my memory. And so for me, music was always really visual, connected to imagery and scenery and such. So it was natural that movie music would really connect with me. So anyway, he took me to see Empire Strikes Back, and I remember leaving the theater in tears because I remember saying to my dad and my brother, I was like, he can't be his father. He can't be. That just can't be. And they were like, yeah, okay, calm down, kid. But I just, I whistle sing the melodies and stuff, and I was so connected to the sound, and so John Williams was really burned into my memory, and I remember going to see E.T. That was not long after that, and it was the first time I ever remember crying at a movie. When he leaves, and it's all the music is so powerful and connected to the drama. Yeah, so John Williams I was always a huge fan of his music, and then going to Boston and I remember the first time playing with him in the orchestra and as a sub, and just
How did that happen? Somebody subbed out when John Williams was there?
Well, the Boston, it's changed, but there was a time where, when I was there, the Boston Symphony and the Boston Pops, they were basically the same orchestra, but many of the principal players in the Boston Symphony wouldn't play the Boston Pops.
Okay.
So that would create, because and it's actually, it still is this way, the Boston Symphony trombone section's only got 3 trombones. So that means if Ron Barron wasn't playing, that means they always needed to hire an extra.
Right.
And then
would they just kind of move up and then?
Yeah, Norman would play first, and I would come in and play second. Sometimes I'd play third, on many of John Williams' stuff is 4 trombone parts, so I'd come in and play extra or whatever. And they also have this other orchestra that I played in for a long time called the Boston Pops Esplanade Orchestra. That's a third orchestra because there's just such demand for the playing that they created this whole other orchestra that's all freelancers. And I played in that orchestra for many years as both principal and second. In fact, I kept playing in that orchestra after I moved on to join the Utah Symphony. I still played for many years doing that. And that's when I get to play with John Williams in the Pops. And actually, he's every bit as nice as he appears, if not more so. It's he has this way of cueing you when you play, and it's your grandfather is welcoming you in to play, and so it's
I've seen him conduct. It is
it's amazing.
Very gentle.
Yeah, and he's such a incredible musician and incredible ear, and just he's so meticulous, but in a very gentle, gentlemanly way. And so then after I played with him there, I went on to Utah, and actually my first season in the Utah Symphony was the year that the Winter Olympics were in Salt Lake.
Okay.
And so he wrote
That's right.
a piece for the Mormon Tabernacle Choir and the Utah Symphony to record. And so he saw me there, and he was like, "You're here now," So we recorded that with the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, and it was wonderful to work with him there. And I kept playing on occasion with him in various settings. But anyway, after after playing, that was probably where I started to do a lot of my John Williams trombone choir arrangements, because I played in this trombone choir in Utah with the then bass trombone player of the Utah Symphony. He ran a trombone choir in Salt Lake, and we would play my arrangements, and it was just a lot of, we put on these free concerts, and it was a lot of fun. He was also the church music director for a church in town, so we had a great venue to play, and and we
was all in Salt Lake City?
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, Rusty McKinney's his name, and he was the bass trombone player in Utah when I was there. So then I moved on to Pittsburgh.
How long were you in Salt Lake before you moved on?
I was there 8 seasons.
8 seasons?
8 seasons, yeah. And so then I moved to Pittsburgh, and I think it was like my second year in Pittsburgh. John Williams came to conduct the Pittsburgh Symphony on a concert, and I bumped into him backstage, and again, he was like, "Wait a minute, so now you're here?" Really
following each other around.
Yeah, I said, "Yeah, it was part of the trombone witness protection program. They just move us from one orchestra."
That makes sense.
And then about, it's 5 years now. It's been 5 years since I last played with him, and that was around the time, because I'd started doing the overdubs 6 years ago. So around 5 years ago, I saw him backstage, and we were chatting, and I said, I wanted to tell you about this sort of project that I've been doing with recording, arrangements that I've done for trombone choir of your music, and I record all the parts. And he was like, "Really? How?" He goes, "That sounds really interesting. How many voices are we talking?" And he says, "Are we talking like 5, 6 parts?" And I was like, "Actually, some of them are like 15, 16 parts." And he was like, his eyes got really wide. He goes, "Really?" He was like, "I would really like to hear that."
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, great." And I said, "I'm working on it. It's a slow process." At that point, I had kind of sketched out what would then become the album. But, trying to play full-time and symphony and I teach at Duquesne, and now I run the brass department. It's like trying to find time to record when I don't have to save my chops a little bit for playing in the symphony. It just took a while. So about 3 years ago, I don't remember who it was who said, but they were like, you should just send him something. Just send him a short thing. Like, it doesn't have to be the finished product, So I have this overdub of the Planet Krypton Fanfare and Superman March, and so I had done. Actually, the very first overdub I ever did was Superman, the original version I did for it. So then I re-recorded it, where I added, this guy, the contrabass trombone.
Did you, when you re-recorded it, was it in the back of your mind that I'm going to send this to John Williams?
No, actually, that one, no. I just was like, I was using the soprano trombone and the contrabass. I mean, that one is for 16 parts. I think there's 2 sopranos, 2 altos, 6 tenors, 4 basses, and 2 contras, or something like that.
Yeah.
And my buddy Ed Steffen, who's he used to be the timpanist in the Pittsburgh Symphony. Now he's in San Francisco. I don't know how we got on the subject, but he's a great all-around percussionist as well, like not just timpani. So he recorded all the percussion and all the percussion parts and the timpani part for that arrangement, and we put it all together. And I thought this would be this is the perfect thing to send in. And I wrote a letter and I told him, this is like kind of what I've been up to. And I remember I said, you might remember us talking backstage, and I just wanted to share this with you. And that was the summer that he was recording the score to The Force Awakens. So I knew he was busy, and I never dreamed that he would. I actually even wrote in the letter. I was like, I don't expect you to respond.
Sure.
I know you're very busy. I just wanted you to have this and to hear it if you could. And so 2 weeks later, I got that letter right here. This is a framed, handwritten letter from John Williams. He sent 2 weeks later, like congratulating me on my.
2 weeks later?
I got it 2 weeks later.
What?
After he had gotten.
Wow.
Yeah, so 3 weeks turnaround. Like I sent it to California.
I mean, he
got
must
it.
have just listened to it right away and then
Yeah.
wrote the letter.
Yeah, and it was
crazy.
he took the time to handwrite a letter, and he even hand addressed it.
Uh,
I remember getting that letter going, I can die now.
Yeah.
So it was such such a gracious letter, and I mean, it was very short, but he was like, I can see you've done great work, and I congratulate you, and I hope to see you soon, and so it was incredible, and that really actually kind of shot me in the arm a bit to keep going on this project, because the problem with my album was that I had already recorded many of the tracks, but on really previous equipment and not as good gear, and so I knew I was going to have to go back and kind of re-record a lot of things and redo things. So I just knew that was going to be a big job, you know, and it's
and not quite as gratifying as when you're doing it the first time.
Yeah. But I did add stuff and that kind of and then I changed things around. But I wanted it all to sound, have the same microphone, same software, and just make sure it was all matching. And yeah, I mean, that album is is just under an hour, and the concert versions will be shorter and less parts, because there's a couple of arrangements in there that are 19 parts, and
have you ever done the math on how long you're playing on the album?
Oh, yeah, I haven't done it total, like how many actual tracks I could
Like if you add up all of the amount of your playing there is. Because I've done that sometimes when I do like an 8-part arrangement that's 4 minutes, but it's 4 minutes times all of those parts that you're actually playing on the horn.
Right. Yeah, I mean, when you think about it,
it's not an hour album that you're playing.
It's 19
at
albums.
least.
Yeah. So if you were to take each part, I mean, it's incredible, like how much time it takes. And when I first started doing them, I actually didn't. In many cases, I didn't even write out arrangements. Like I would actually just put the score up and just start recording parts. And I just play things until it was. Until it sounded right. 5 years ago was when John Whitaker at University of Alabama contacted me, and he said, I'm sitting here with my grad assistant, and we're nerding out, listening to your overdubs, and he's like, I'm smoking a cigar and drinking some scotch, and we're listening to your overdubs, and we're trying to figure out a way to get you here because we want to do a concert of these arrangements. And I was like, the only problem is I haven't written a lot of them out, so I had to go back and like extract the arrangement from the recording. I had to go and listen.
Transcribe yourself.
Yeah. And so he was the first one. It's funny, these overdubs opened so many doors for me. It's like being in the Pittsburgh Symphony alone is great, and but doing this, like it's just the 1-2 punch of it really opened all these doors, and now people want me to come. And what's really great about these concerts is like, it challenges them, but through a lens of music that they know and love. Because like we're not, I imagine it's the same for you. It's like we're brought in as educators, and I love when the teachers will say, "Oh man, my students, like I couldn't get them to work on multiple tonguing, and then I put Imperial March in front of them, and now they won't stop." Or I had this one kid who had trouble with his high register, and then I put him on one of your arrangements, and like because he loves the music, he like figures out how to do it, and so the educational value of this music is so far beyond, I think, what the publishers really realize.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, on the one hand, this music is not easy.
Right.
For us,
right.
Let alone a student.
Right.
And on the second point, which is the first step of learning music, is being able to hear it in your head before you play it, know how it goes, so you can accomplish that. If you already pretty much know how it goes, it's a lot easier to get to that next step and try to make music with it. But and then it's more fun if you're actually accomplishing what it sounds like or what you want it to sound like, and so you practice. And just like you said, for the students, absolutely, it's this educational tool, but for us, you're always setting the bar higher, and it works at every level, I think, of student or professional.
Totally agree. And, I find that, it's like I'm a member of a major orchestra, and we play John Williams music all year, through many different settings, concert settings, whether it be a film concert or a youth concert or anything like that. And probably the only orchestras that play his music more than we do is maybe an orchestra like the LA Phil or the Boston Symphony, right? And I still can't get enough.
Right.
And I would love, and that's part of why I did these arrangements and love playing them, is like, I love playing the trombone parts he wrote, but I also like playing the other music that he wrote that I don't get to play in orchestras, And, like I said, even just for myself, it is safe to say that I've improved my abilities on a lot of these auxiliaries as well as my regular tenor by playing his music in those settings. So it's like, there's no downside to it.
Can you talk a little bit about how you feel about the serious music debate on this? Because I feel like you have a unique perspective, being in a major orchestra. You play serious music all the time, right? But you have this connection to commercial music, and specifically a commercial composer who is known to be pretty serious about it. The music stands alone, but he's writing to a movie. He's writing specifically for what's on screen, and so there's a story, and that's controversial this day and age.
Well, I feel sometimes frustrated that, when people talk about John Williams, they'll say, oh, he's the world's greatest or most famous film composer. And I'm like, I think you should just drop the film part and just say he's one of the greatest composers ever. Because, he's writing to a medium that is popular now. And I think, if he were alive during Wagner or Verdi's time, he would have been writing opera, and he would have been writing, and I've actually had the fortune to play some of his concert works when I was in Boston, premiering some of his regular symphony pieces, like concertos and stuff, that kind of thing. I think that the film music, especially the way he writes, it's like he's got one foot in the Wagner style and then one foot in the current style. Like he would be Wagner,
or vice versa.
He's the modern day Wagner.
If Verdi were alive today, he would be writing for
movies. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I totally agree, because you think about it, and it's like when we sometimes we'll go into schools and play for kids and with the symphony players, and some of my brass colleagues will go in and play some trios for the kids, and if one of us plays the Star Wars melody, all the kids start singing along, they all know it and they all are familiar with it, and so it's not like they all know it, and they might not know Wagner or Verdi or Berlioz or whatever, but he has created this incredible gateway to orchestra music, an orchestral art form, that many people would never even know. They would never hear if they didn't go to movies. Thank goodness that George Lucas, hired him to do the Star Wars film, and fostered in this whole cultural, this whole part of our culture that, many people wouldn't even know what orchestras sound like if it weren't for Star Wars or for the film composing. So
absolutely. So I have a question that popped in my head. He's known for his certain style of music, right? I feel like, as the resident John Williams expert who's transcribed a lot of his music now, is there anything that you can think of where he really kind of pushes it for what we know and love in film music? Really tonal things and certain modes. Is there anything where you're like, he's kind of doing something that's more contemporary here? Yeah. I think that another track that I did on my album, where it's the one where
when his mother dies, and it's when he's in the village.
Which track is it?
It's Shmi's Death.
Okay.
Is what it's called. The Tuscan Camp and Shmi's Death. And it starts off very simple, and there's a single solo line and it's kind of him when he's found her, and she dies in his arms. And there's this chorale that happens right after it that just sounds like something out of Siegfried or something, you know. It just sounds like Wagner, you know. And then right after that is this fast like figure that I've never heard anything like that in film. It's just so harmonically bizarre, but it's like him coming unhinged.
Sure.
You know, and it fits so perfectly because it's that moment when he she dies in his arms, and then he looks up, and it's like you see that flash of who he's going to become, you know. And of course, as we are always prone to do, after that sort of happens, you hear a muted trombone playing this long, stretched out version of the Imperial March, but it's like sort of stretched out, and it's like you can tell it's the notes, but it's not like a march. It's not real formalized, you know? And he's got all these incredible harmonies going on in there that are just, I don't know, they're not even really chords. They're just like different clusters, and I don't hear a lot of film composers doing that, you know. And it feels like he's the one who's really pushed those bounds, you know. Take a score like JFK, you know, like I did an overdub of the Arlington Cemetery scene. It's like if you were to drop the needle in the middle of that score, you would think you were listening to some Schoenberg or some Webern or something.
Absolutely, I remember that score. That's like
it's amazing.
Yeah,
it's so powerful,
textured all the way through.
Yeah.
The first one we're going to do, your first professional gig you ever had.
First professional gig. Boy, that's... I think I played in like some small Connecticut like community band or something, like one of those music performance trust fund gigs.
Yeah.
When I was like 14.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was like the first time you got paid to play a gig?
Yeah, and I remember, getting, filling out this mile long of paperwork and getting this like, $20 check or something,
That made it on the resume though, right?
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay. You have like a worst gig story?
Well, I was playing a Boston Pops tour, and back then I used to check my instrument. I had this flight case, and I was just having so much trouble with getting on planes, and then I bought this flight case. So I flew from Salt Lake City, and the tour was starting near Newburgh, and I flew. I took 2 plane flights, made it. In order to get there in time, I flew from, through 2 connections, and then I get to Newburgh, no trombone, and I had stupidly actually I had my mouthpiece, but I had no horn, and it's a Sunday, and I call ahead, and I said to the personnel manager, I was like, I'm here, but my horn didn't make it. So they they like put the word out in the town, and like some old retired band director brings this old like Bach 36, and my mouthpiece doesn't fit that horn,
right.
So like I have a large bore tenor, and so I have to play on his like 6.5 AL mouthpiece, which is not what I play on.
Oh man!
And I'm playing this horn, and I literally got it 15 minutes before the concert started. Like that's when he showed up with it, and I had it. So I like basically got it working, and then played this. And I had like to play solos and things in this concert, you know. So that was pretty frightening.
Yeah, where was that concert?
It was near Woodstock. I can't remember the venue. It's a performing arts center.
I bet it was
Outdoor.
SPAC.
Yeah.
Saratoga Performing Arts Center.
I think so. I think it was somewhere. I think that's where it was. But it was like, and then I had
big outdoor thing, right?
Yeah, and it's like
gosh.
rock arts on a podium. So that was a nightmare. That was a nightmare. And then they didn't find it. They couldn't find it for 3 days. Like it got diverted to other places.
A 3-day nightmare.
So then I went to Dylan's, and then they let me borrow a horn that was similar to mine that I played for 2 more concerts. And then I had to go back there and give that back, and then finally got my horn back. So that was like a nightmare.
Yeah, I would say.
Best gig? Oh, I mean, you know, not to ring the bell again, but basically, you know, anytime I play in an orchestra or John Williams on the podium.
But you have to choose one of them. So which is it? Is it the first one maybe, or?
Yeah, I'd say that was my, the first time I ever played with him. We did like Summon the Heroes, and I was playing extra on that. And we played like William Tell and like some major orchestra pieces too. And I was like a kid in a candy store, you know. And then there's a picture there. This is this might have been that's me with my goatee and birth control glasses on, and but this is 1999.
Okay.
And it is the concert premiere of music from episode 1 from Phantom Menace. So it was the concert premiere of that suite. So that was 1999.
In Boston.
Yeah, in Boston. And, I remember, I played with him a bunch by that point, and I asked if I could take a picture with him, and I walked in, and he goes, he was like, "Oh, I'm so happy we can do this." And I was like, I'm the one who's happy. Like he was so gracious that he was like, "Oh, I'm so glad we can do this." You sound wonderful, and he was so friendly. I mean, it's just great, And my story is far from unique,
right?
So that was probably, I'd say, my first time playing with him was just because he was such a boyhood hero and still is,
The record you listened to most. Or did when you were a kid?
In my lifetime?
Yeah.
One of my favorite recordings, like hearing the old Empire brass when Norman Bolter was in it, the Russian brass.
Yeah.
That is an amazing. I wore out my record. I had a record of it. I wore it out. It doesn't work anymore.
Yeah. I think that must be the winner then. Musician who blew your mind and changed everything.
Well, when I was first starting to really take the instrument seriously, Christian Lindberg.
Sure.
Was, hearing those solo recordings of Bluebells of Scotland, Hindemith Sonata, that kind of stuff. But then going to Curtis and hearing Glenn Dodson live, I mean, just he was so inspirational, but in a lot of ways he probably contributed to why I was so dark on myself as a kid, as that age, because I was like, man, I'm never going to be like this. I'm never going to be able to do this kind of stuff. And Norman Bolter, when I first heard him on those Empire Brass recordings with him, I was just, what an incredible sound, and hearing his Mahler 7 euphonium solo with the Boston Symphony with those Seiji Ozawa.
Yeah.
Somebody played that for me when I was a student at Curtis, and I was like, what the hell is that? Like, I couldn't believe how good it was. And I remember thinking like that, and then the Empire Brass, and like hearing those recordings and hearing some of his Boston pop stuff, I was like, I gotta meet this guy.
Yeah. So Lindbergh, Alessi, Dodson,
Bolter.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would probably be pretty. Yeah, and then he's so modest about it, but like, I was a student at Curtis when Nitzan got the job in Philly, and when he replaced Dodson. And I heard his first season, hearing him play, he's just such an incredible player and musician, and he's so modest. He would hate that I'm saying that right now. Because Nitzan and I are good buddies, and
putting him on that list, he'd be like, come on.
He would be like, I don't belong on that list. Take me off that.
But he definitely does.
Of course he does. Of course he does. He's an incredible player.
What's a fact about you we don't know?
This audience?
Any audience. But yeah, if there's something interesting that's like...
Well, I'm a car freak, and I'm an instructor at the racetrack here in Pittsburgh.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's a good one.
Yeah, I'm a big speed freak, and that's all Dodson's fault.
So, favorite car?
Well, I currently drive a BMW M4, which I did a European delivery on while on tour with the Pittsburgh Symphony. So I picked it up in Europe and drove it around, and I'm loving that car.
Yeah.
It's an amazing machine. But, I feel like someday I've got to step my foot into the Porsche world, because that's what Glenn Dodson drove. And he gave me a ride, there's a fun story where I was that junior year of high school, of Curtis, my junior year at Curtis, I was having a rough go, and I went and I damaged my horn. Like, I set it down, and like the bell, like the screw joint came loose, and the bell fell onto the slide and dented this horn. And dented both slides, so I couldn't move it. And like, I called him, and I was like, of course this would happen. I called Glenn Dodson, and I said, I damaged my horn. And he goes, why don't you come over to the house? He goes, I have a little tool that I can fix it with, get it going until you can get it professionally repaired. So I went and I drove over. I walked over to his house. I didn't have a car in Philly. I walked over to his house. He got it going. And then he's like, so why don't we play some duets and stuff? And we started playing together, and then he would play me some recordings of when he was in Chicago, and like all these old reel-to-reel recordings that he had, and show me these fun pictures and play some more. And then I didn't realize it until I looked back later, but he was basically trying to calm me down and get me. And then he was like, so what's going on? You seem really down these days. And he basically turned me around, he kind of got me back on track, because I thought I was like one of the worst students he's ever had. I was like, I got to be one of the worst students you've ever had. I'm not getting better fast enough. And he goes, that is nonsense. You are doing great, and I'm really happy with your progress. You're going to be fine. And he gave me a pep talk basically. But then it was like after midnight, so he's like, I can't have you walking home at this hour. So he backed his Porsche 914 out of the garage and gave me a ride home in it. And I was like, he was breaking every traffic law between his house and my apartment, just flying. And I remember just this big grin on my face. And I've always been a car freak as a kid, but that imprinted in my memory. And I remember him speeding away after he saw, he made sure I unlocked my door, and he sped away. And I remember going, someday I'm going to play in a great orchestra, and I'm going to drive a fast car like that. I'm going to drive something like that, or and so here I am, and now I play in the PSO, and I'm an instructor at the racetrack here, and yeah, so it's a lot of fun. Yeah,
all right,
that's kind of an unusual.
That is perfect.
Yeah,
had no idea.
Yeah.
Okay, current project you're excited about?
Well, I'm sketching out my next Overdub album.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. I've got some things that are already kind of in the can from previous projects that I'm just going to remaster and re-edit, to kind of my current style. But it's going to be sort of more of a general movie album. It's going to be movie stuff again, but not just John Williams. Like, cool. I'm gonna do some Danny Elfman stuff. I think that, especially now that I have a contrabass trombone, it's like perfect for that.
Yeah.
I'll probably do some of the new Giacchino stuff, like maybe it's from the stuff from Star Trek.
Yeah.
And Yeah, it's just stuff like that. I'll probably put that Superman arrangement. I'll probably put that on there, my Green Hornet arrangement, and put that on the album and do something along that line. But I'm very excited about that. I do the SoundCloud thing, and SoundCloud's been very good to me because it's been a great way to get that stuff out there. I mean, I kind of want to get more into the YouTube thing too. I feel like that's such a even more powerful avenue, and I haven't really explored it enough yet.
Yeah, it's I mean,
it's so time consuming.
Takes twice as long.
I mean, you're doing that. Yeah, you're doing that full time, and I imagine you have trouble keeping up with your deadlines too.
Yeah,
so I can only imagine me trying to.
Yeah, no, full-time job and family and YouTube. That's you're counting down something. Something's got to give there.
Yeah, exactly.
Favorite quick warm-up? Like if you only have a couple minutes before, you have like a go-to?
Well, I have my daily routine that I do that I've written out. If I take my time, that daily routine takes me about a little over an hour, but I can do it quicker. I can kind of shore it up to about a half hour, maybe 35, 40 minutes. But that's different than a warm-up. Like if I'm just like trying to get warmed up, probably the first page of my routine probably takes about 10 minutes to do that part. Just some easy air attack stuff, lip slur stuff, and if people want it, I'm happy to share it with people if they want to reach out to me. So jimnova.com. So
there you go.
Even trombone players can remember that.
Yes.
Thank you so much for watching. Great conversation with Jim. Big thank you to Jim Nova for making this happen. We really appreciate it. And thank you all for watching all the way to the end. If you're coming out to the International Trombone Festival, we cannot wait to see you there. The final evening concert will be Jim's Star Wars album, the concert version anyway. And we're super excited. It is going to be a crazy star-studded cast of trombonists on that concert. You can check all of that out at trombonefestival.net. If you have any questions, go ahead and comment. If you liked this kind of long-form interview, definitely comment with that as well, so we can do more of it. If you didn't like it, please tell us that too. If you want to be cut up into smaller segments, we could definitely do that. We're here for you. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.